Everything you learned in history class about the Industrial Revolution? Yeah, it's probably wrong. Welcome to the explainer that's about to completely rewrite human progress. We aren't looking at old opinions today. We are using 800 years of hardcore, undeniable data to shatter the classic timeline. Prepare to have your mind blown. Think about it. We've all been taught this very neat, specific story about exactly when the modern world changed and how those big changes supposedly destroyed the lives of ordinary people. But the raw, unyielding numbers, they tell a radically different, almost anti-common sense tale. It's a total reality check. And we have the receipts. Economist Gregory Clark didn't just sit around guessing or reading old philosophy books. He dug up an astonishing 156,000 individual historical records. We're talking tens of thousands of handwritten notes on medieval wages, prices, and rents spanning 8 centuries. That sample size is absolutely massive, and data doesn't lie. This massive historical ledger directly confronts our most cherished economic assumptions and literally tears the disguise off of old knowledge. The myth you memorized for your exams is on one side, but the reality of what actually happened is completely different. So, let's dive into the numbers. First up, the dead loop broken. Let's tackle the biggest lie of them all, the actual timeline of when this economic explosion really happened. If you look at the data, you see this flat line stretching across centuries. For hundreds of years, humanity was trapped in a brutal, dead loop. It was a vicious cycle where a bigger population instantly meant lower wages, instant poverty, total technological stagnation, literally a dead end. Now, your textbooks proudly claim the Industrial Revolution sparked around 1800 with massive factories and steam engines, right? But the wage data brutally proves otherwise. The real leap in economic efficiency actually kicked off way back in the 1640s. That is a full century and a half earlier than the classic story. So our escape from that historical poverty trap didn't just happen overnight in the 19th century. The timeline clearly shows a much earlier, organic rise in efficiency. We started breaking the chains of poverty long before the first major factories were even built. Crazy, right? Moving on to Section 2. Read books for nothing? Next up is a massive slap to modern logic, specifically the idea that more skills naturally equal more money. Today, it's just common sense to assume the industrial boom heavily rewarded specialized skills. Better skills equal better pay. But the hard data shows the exact opposite happening during this crucial period in history. It completely defies expectations. The relentless collapse of the skill premium is honestly shocking. Clark tracked specific matched pairs, comparing, say, a master carpenter to a basic laborer in the exact same town. The pay gap absolutely plummeted from a 100% premium in the 1300s to just 50% by 1400. And it stayed shockingly low for 500 years. Talk about anti-common sense. Paradoxically, English families started educating their kids more right when the financial payoff for those skills was hitting rock bottom. They invested heavily in human capital, essentially reading books for seemingly no financial gain. The market wasn't rewarding them at all, yet society pushed forward anyway. Which brings us to Section 3, were workers really miserable? Let's address the famous tearjerker, the deeply entrenched idea that factories and industry completely destroyed the working class. Famous thinkers like Marx and Engels painted a famously grim picture of this era. They claimed the pre-industrial worker was far better off, living this peaceful, pastoral life, and argued industrialization brought nothing but misery and starvation. It's a very powerful narrative. But remember, they didn't have an 800-year receipt to check their facts. Because the undeniable, hard-coded truth is pointing straight up. Workers' real purchasing power climbed rapidly during the exact same decades that critics claimed the working class was starving to death. This data brutally slaps that old pessimistic narrative right in the face. The condition of the working class was dramatically and permanently improving. Real wages grew 13-fold from 1800 onwards. They gained over 1% every single year, smashing through medieval peaks and never looking back. This completely shatters the mainstream narrative of total misery. The numbers just don't support the doom and gloom. Section 4. The truth of the hardcore ledger. So this begs a massive question. How did previous historians get it so spectacularly wrong? How on earth did we end up with the wrong timeline and the wrong narrative for so long? Well, it turns out earlier researchers fundamentally messed up the math. On what, you ask? On how much workers were spending on drinking. Seriously, a catastrophic historical math error regarding the price of beer skewed our entire understanding of the Industrial Revolution. You can't make this stuff up.
Older studies used these rigid, flawed formulas. They assumed workers stubbornly kept buying wildly expensive beer, even when prices skyrocketed, completely ignoring basic human behavior. This artificially inflated the historical cost of living by a massive 17-fold margin. Clark fixed this simply by tracking the actual, dynamic price of a historical pint of beer.
And by correcting that deeply flawed calculation, the entire picture just flips. This study proves the pre-industrial past was actually much poorer than we romanticized, and the industrial boom was much richer for the average worker than we ever admitted. Which brings us to a final, very provocative thought. If the foundational facts of our economic history were this wrong, what else is wrong? What other modern truths are built on bad data? This 800-year ledger isn't just about correcting the past. It forces us to relentlessly question every piece of conventional wisdom we hold today about wealth, progress, and society. Keep questioning the data, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.